This is Ben Borg.
This is Katrina Borg.
This is Claire Green.
This is Maggie Morgan. And this is the More Than Macros podcast.
This episode of the More Than Macros podcast is brought to you by Married to My Macros, performance nutrition coaching. Married to My Macros is a personalized one-on-one nutrition coaching service providing the highest level of support to clients with the practical tools and accountability needed to improve health, physical performance, and body composition through diet. While this podcast will fuel your mind, let the team at Married to My Macros fuel your body.
Well, welcome back to another MTMM Coaches Talk, COVID edition, I guess, 2.0. We're here to talk to Coach Ben and Coach Kat, who are in Melbourne, where they just went back on lockdown at midnight last night, was it?
Yeah, so midnight last night. So there's obviously been a spike in cases in Melbourne over the last week. And there's been a lot of sort of other stuff going on the last 2 weeks. They started with a postcode re-lockdown in some hotspots, which was just a farce, but probably the first symbol or signal rather that we were heading back this way. And then we had some terrible stuff with some government housing towers in Flemington where they just basically rocked up with a bunch of and locked everyone in with zero warning. And then within 48 hours of that, the whole state pretty much, metropolitan Melbourne
Which is essentially the whole state, but yeah.
Don't say that. She didn't say that. All the work we do with rural affiliates.
Population-wise?
But yeah, so metropolitan Melbourne is now back down into lockdown from midnight last night. So I don't know, like, I guess we're kind of in two minds. Obviously, you know, when you think on a level of MTMM and what we do and what we strive to do, and, you know, if we look at fundamentally what our whole business philosophy is, it's trying to do whatever we can to service a community in order to improve health outcomes for all those within the community. And working alongside affiliates is a really big part of how we do that. You know, all those affiliate owners that are so happy to have us in and let us present and work with us to provide information to their community. They're definitely run by individuals that, you know, have open space purely for that reason. They want to create an environment where they can help people be better versions of themselves, be healthier versions of themselves, give them some self-confidence, you know, through strength and conditioning, and having us come in there and help kind of facilitate that on a nutrition front. And so when you see people who you are so aligned with in this fight against chronic disease and, you know, complacency and sedentary lifestyle and all the rest of it, and see those people kind of have to be, you know, struggling, and it's difficult, right? On a personal level, that they're not just business owners, but they're our friends, and you know, they're people that we've had at our wedding. And
just for a little bit of context, how long have they been able to be open for? Like, when did they reopen? This is
the other point, right? Obviously, we had a big 3-month, you know, kind of shutdown with no timeline. It was kind of just see how things go. Then we had a 2-week, hey, here's a date that you guys can reopen. So there was a lot of revamping, like a lot of costs incurred to make sure that everything was compliant with the new regulations that had to be followed in order for gyms to open. And then we're 13 days later, and it's like straight back down really tomorrow night, no warning. So it's got to be super frustrating, but
I think a big part of that was like gym reopening was kind of one of the latter things to reopen. And so we were already starting, you know, there had been some protests for Black Lives Matter and things like that. So our cases were already starting to go back up before gyms reopened. But I think everyone was obviously very hopeful and very excited to get back to it. So it's like, no, we're going to reopen regardless. And I mean, really, I think the writing was on the wall for us, certainly, by the time gyms reopened, that like we were going back into lockdown. It was a question of when, not if. And then as soon as we started this postcode specific lockdown in these hotspot areas, I know I was talking to people and saying, well, it's only a matter of time before we all go back in. And even the day before we went into lockdown, I had a midwife appointment, and I was talking to the midwives, and I had said that, and they're like, oh, really? Do you think? I was like, yeah, we are going back into lockdown, and then the press conference the next day. So
I think,
what
Big on.
this might be a difficult question to answer, but what do you think is the difference between Melbourne and say Vancouver in terms of you guys going back into lockdown and it being so evident? I mean, the weather's one thing. Do you think that has a big impact?
I think probably like not being an epidemiologist, and there have not been any like good studies on this yet that I've seen. I don't think that has played as massive a role as we potentially thought that it might. I think that many of our we had cluster outbreaks that were related to returning travelers who were quarantined, and security had broken some quarantine breaches, which is just the latest scandal.
Security guards sleeping with people who are being quarantined for COVID and like taking them out on dates to shopping centers and stuff like that. Like, I don't.
It's really sad because I think the premier's actually like done an exemplary job of managing this, and it was like the one thing that was bungled was security for quarantine travelers was handed over to a private firm, which you would expect a level of professionalism from, right? And it just
Right.
So there's this argument now that he should have specifically specified that they weren't meant to have sexual relations with the people in quarantine. Like, come on.
that's like how you
Anyway,
can't
I
have
don't really want to get into the
That's
details because I don't want it to be political debate.
you know, and then some other kind of cluster hotspot outbreaks that were related to large family gatherings, and then those were kind of brought back into a couple schools and things like that. So it was very clustered initially, and unfortunately it was clustered in locations where there was like high density living and things like that. So
I think when we did our last update, I think that one of the things I said was like, I guess my fear now is that as we start to repeal restrictions, like you could tell, you know, after a few weeks of full lockdown, people were starting to become a little bit complacent, spending a little bit, you know, more time, you know, kind of people walking their dogs, but gathering a little bit while they were chatting, walking their dogs outside. And those kind of little things that started to creep up. You were noticing more traffic on the roads and stuff like that. And so I think that is also, we just got this like level of complacency where it was like, oh yeah, the worst is over. We made it through, you know, maybe we had a handful of cases and like it's done now. So we're just going to try to revert back to that.
Yeah, speaking from like a personal, obviously not, sorry, the dog wants to get in on this.
She heard you were talking about dogs.
Yeah, not a professional basis, but on a personal kind of experiential front, having been working with so many clients in Canada, particularly Vancouver, and then, you know, living here, I would say that specifically the Vancouverites took things a lot more seriously. And even as reopening started to occur, we're still maintaining social distancing, and we're a lot more cautious going back to activities and still doing things in a lot smaller groups. Whereas, yeah, no, here it was like the second people got an inch, it was like house parties and massive gatherings, and shopping malls have been like, you can't get a park it takes you an hour to find a park at a shopping mall sort of thing. So
I think
it was very much like back to real life and beyond very quickly.
I think mask culture, like, and obviously the jury is still out with general consensus, but more people seem to be more willing to wear masks in Van as well.
There's almost no mask usage here.
Whereas like here, you are still greater minority, and you're still, if you do wear a mask, it's like people are avoiding you like the plague.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a combination of a lot of those small factors. But I think kind of the important message to get out today is primarily one, if you know, if you are a gym in Melbourne and you need help, like we're still here to help. Like we're still got a whole lot of resources that, you know, we did initially create, that we're still creating, that we've got. Reach out if you do need help. But if you're, you know, not just an affiliate gym, but any other gym globally, like maybe all the work that you've been putting into continuing to create an online presence and an online community and that kind of engagement away from your gym, let this be a warning that this could potentially happen, you know, in where you are. And that's probably not something that you want to let go by the wayside just yet.
It's worth continuing development on that. I think something that's been so encouraging to see down here, and is like heartbreaking as it is for, you know, all of our kind of affiliates and friends and acquaintances who do own gyms and businesses is the level of resilience and the attitude going into round 2 has been so phenomenally different, right? It was crushing the first time and everyone was terrified and we didn't know how people were going to respond and what the support was going to be like in the community, versus this time around it's like everyone's kind of just like, okay, yeah, not our first rodeo. We know what to do. We know how to make it through this. We know how to keep you guys active and engaged. And we've developed all of these tools. I mean, we spent the first 2 months of COVID working huge 60+ hour weeks developing tools and strategies and things like that to help out our gyms and our clients. And we now kind of collectively all have that and are so much better equipped to move forward. And so it's just continuing to be diligent and put in the work in that way. But I think the attitude is pretty amazing this time.
And I think, you know, when you have a 6-week goal where they said we're going to do this for 6 weeks, having that not, oh, this is just indefinite, but having like a deadline here kind of thing. And look, my like idea is probably, or my understanding is probably, we're going to get to the 6 weeks, they're going to reassess. And then, you know, maybe they say, okay, here's a reopening date. And maybe that's 4 weeks away from that point. So like that would not surprise me.
But people always do better when they have a target.
Giving them a work towards. And I think from an individual basis, a lot of the conversations we've been having clients this kind of week has got back into the gym for those 13 days, realized how much I'd let things slip in the initial quarantine, and are now super determined to kind of use this 6 weeks as a like break back in cycle so that it doesn't hurt that much when I go back now this time. So I think
on that note too, a lot of clients and actually just people that I've been talking to here at the gym and stuff like that, it's been a lot of those types of conversations, but a lot of the opposite as well. Like actually, I maintained a lot of my strength during quarantine, and I actually am coming back a lot stronger than I thought I would. So I think that would, if we had to go back into another 6 weeks of lockdown, that would give people that extra push to say, okay, no, what I was doing wasn't just a waste of time, or, you know, these bodyweight workouts, are actually useful, which is helpful too.
So I think it's an even blend of the two, right? It's a demonstration that even just a little bit is so much more beneficial than doing absolutely nothing, right? Mm-hmm. But if you find like you've really been super struggling to motivate to do anything at all, then hopefully you got a little bit of a retaste for it in that kind of small opening time. And that has kind of reignited the fire, even if that just means you're going for a walk, right? So yeah, I think that there's obviously always going to be that silver lining, but I think the great kind of overbearing deal with COVID is like, we don't know how this ends. We don't know how this story plays out. And we don't know whether this is the second lockdown of 5 lockdowns potentially over the next 12 months or 2 years. Like we really have no idea what kind of handle or what kind of scenario we are looking at globally, not just locally here in Melbourne, but globally. So I think that, yeah, you know, if you are an affiliate owner or what, you know, in like anywhere in the world and you've been working through a shutdown, don't let that fall by the wayside, right? But I think that, yeah, it's there's just so many unknowns, you know, and this could be, if we continue to get complacent and think like, oh, now this time we've really gotten over it and we kind of lax like we had, like I can definitely see it taking 2 or 3 of these before people get the message that like, when we say you can gather in 5, that's not a free for all to go back to having house parties. Like if you keep abusing the kind of like freedoms that we give you, we're going to keep going back into lockdown, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, there are so many unknowns that we're dealing with, but I think in general, the attitudes that we're seeing at the moment are super positive, and that's super good for us. You know, given, like we said, that we are striving to improve health outcomes, and when people have a healthy mindset, that goes a long way into their motivation and into their compliance and into their determination to continue to strive towards those goals, no matter what the landscape looks like.
On like a kind of a micro level, I have to say that like I am so incredibly proud of my client base through COVID. There's very few situations.
I'm more proud of mine than Ken is.
Yeah, no, mine's better.
I'm proud of mine.
There's very few situations in which I saw people regress. Like, you know, people kept pushing the dial forward, kept moving forward, kept achieving more progress, came out of the first round, you know, in worldwide, stronger and fitter and more resilient, with better understanding, better knowledge, and better application of kind of like nutritional principles. And when we said at the outset of round one that what a great opportunity this is to work on your nutrition, and we don't have a lot of these other kind of regular things going on around us, and we may not get this opportunity again, people really like picked up that torch and ran with it. And it was honestly, for so many of my clients, I saw much more progress in a very short period of time than I typically would over like a 2 or 3 month period. And so again, it's like, okay, we've got another really, like, it's crappy, but we've got another cool opportunity ahead of us.
I think our clients underestimate a lot how much inspiration they actually give us as coaches as well, right? And I think that I think we're beyond that idea that, because we're coaches, we have everything down pat and perfect all the time. And the reality is, we're human as well. And we're also going through, a lockdown where the reality for us is that, it's going to be a week or 2 weeks or maybe more where my family, can't come and visit the new baby. And, who knows what it means for Kat's parents and their ability to get back into the country to visit their first grandchild. So I think that, shout out to our clients that, seeing them go on and do well and work hard is also sometimes the motivation that we need to be like, okay, and if they can do it and they can work through it, then so can we as well, right? Yeah. And that's what a community is, and ultimately that's what we're trying to do on a grand scale, is just create that kind of community where people feel supported. It's okay to have shitty days and bad days. But it's not okay to have shitty days and bad days and feel like there's no one that you can reach out to, or feel like, doom and gloom all the time. And if that's how you're feeling, reach out, let us know.
Yeah, I think like on a professional level and on a personal level, right? So that's speaking to our affiliate owners and our partners, that's speaking to our current clients, our past clients, just our community members. Engage with your community, whether that be us, whether that be your gyms, because that's the best way for us to all get through it. And like Ben said, the kind of inspiration and motivation works both ways. The more engaged you are with your community, the more you provide those members as well with some push to move forward. So and we've got,
the stronger the collective, the stronger the individual, right? And then the stronger the individuals, the stronger the collective. So
boatloads of resources available. So
some really cool podcast guests coming up, which will be interesting, hopefully entertaining in some degree. But yeah,
if you have any requests of Ben to interview anyone, definitely send them our way. He'll be itching to get some social interaction.
Yeah, now that I'm back locked down, I'm going to need someone else to
other than me,
because now we don't even have Tez. We don't even have Tez in the house anymore. So my interactions have halved basically. So yeah, look, things could always be worse too, and I think that it sometimes can be easy to get down and disappointed. But I think that really the 6 weeks is what you make of it, So, and again, I think we've, potentially in the beginning, maybe I was a little like over exuberant in like just how productive people could be like during the lockdown. But I think that, again, just by doing anything and doing something that is consistent with those big overall goals, despite, the things that are going on, do what you can and try to enjoy it. And it's 6 weeks and we get to review and sit down and go through it again. So
part of me, I'm not going to say jealous, but part of me is like, it would be nice to go back into lockdown for a few reasons. It's really overwhelming.
There was definitely some like silver linings in it. Yeah. So,
I mean, look,
obviously, on a personal level, I'm like, this is okay. This is not a bad time to be locked down. But yeah, definitely more so like feel for the people around me and in my community.
I think probably the greatest thing is that they've taken all the AFL teams out of Melbourne and placed them into hubs.
Literally like 2 days before lockdown.
So we still have a footy season because footy was cancelled for a few weeks, but thankfully there's still something that we're going to be able to watch. Give me a little reprieve there. But I think it's also super exciting that, only 6 weeks of lockdown and we say it's not a long time. But we're going to have a little one, you know, on before that time is up. So that's impending as well.
Mm-hmm. Unless she's real late.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, she's like, I don't want any part of this. You guys figure your stuff out there before I'm making an appearance.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of all we wanted to touch on. You know, if you're in Melbourne and you're around and you're about and you're struggling, reach out. 6 weeks, we got it, right? Try to make the most of it. And then, yeah, hopefully, you know, this is the last time that we have to do this, but hopefully people learn the lessons that, like, you know, if it does get out of control, they will shut us back down, right? So it's up to us really how many times we want to kind of play this game, you know. So hopefully people do take it a little bit more seriously than the last time.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody's over on this side of the world and you're feeling overwhelmed with coming out of quarantine, definitely reach out to us as well. I know that, you know, that's been a common conversation I've been having with clients as well. It's just like, oh my gosh, now there's all these social events and all these trips, interprovincial, that are being planned, and, you know, not forgetting how to make nutrition and fitness and stuff fit into that, but it's just a bit of a, you know, a bit of a shock since we're used to our priorities being shifted a little bit. So definitely feel free to reach out, chat about that too.
It's funny how quick the pendulum swung, isn't it? Of that desire to, we're missing out on all these things, to being like, how do I handle all these things, right?
Yeah.
And like that, not feeling that need to fill every minute of every day with things too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sit on the couch,
take
and
a
play
deep breaths,
Scrabble.
and I mean, look, we've spoken at length about, hopefully, you know, there's a lot of the things that we did experience during the initial lockdown globally that don't get just kind of tossed out the window. And so hopefully, you know, that permission to sit down and have a night in or a day off or just spend some time doing nothing with those around you is one of those things, right? So
yeah, definitely in need of some of that over here. Scheduling that in.
I'll block it out in your schedule.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, that's the thing. Who knows when Arnie Mags is going to be able to come and visit?
No, we need to get.
Well, if I'm in real desperate need of some quarantine, I'll just fly over to.
Yeah, exactly right.
No sleeping with security guards while you're in quarantine here, Mags. Please, if you can handle it.
Oh dear, what a world. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of entertainment for your first few days of lockdown for you guys in Melbourne. And if anybody has any questions, anything to add, anything else you'd like to hear us chat about, I'd be happy to sit down with these two as they're trying to fill their time. The next couple
there's plenty to do.
Yeah, don't worry, we got projects. So
perfect.
All right, sounds good. Chat with you soon.
Yeah, see you in the next one.
Thanks, Mags.